What's good, gamers? Akalon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. I am so sorry that this analysis took so long to come out. I've been spending a lot of time editing and making videos and live streaming, and it's just been nuts. So yeah, I'm sorry that I'm only getting to it now, but it is a pretty fun cinematic. Of course, we are talking about A Crown of Flame, the newest Guardians of the Dream in-game cinematic. The thing is, it's a really cool cinematic, but it's not really a very analysis-heavy cinematic this time around. It's a lot more on the nose. You know, in the past, we would get like a lot of secret messaging and stuff in the cinematic. Sometimes the cinematics would be a little bit confusing at times. This is a lot more just in your face. There's a lot of callbacks. There are stuff to analyze within it. I'm not saying that this, this is just what you see is what you get, but it's not as deep necessarily as some of the old ones. But I think that's sort of kind of its charm, is the fact that, Blizzard have tried for a large part of Dragonflight to be very mysterious, and the conversations would be very heavy and dramatic, and it didn't always land. Like, some did better than others, but for the most part, it didn't always land. This one being a lot more on the nose, being a lot more, what you see is what you get kind of thing, I think is a nice break of pace from, all of the cinematics that we've gotten up unto this point. I also very particularly love the fact that there is no together nonsense in this one. There's no power of friendship. This very much is Fyrakk throwing down the gauntlet and being like, let's go. Also revealing a number of things within this, and that sort of gets us to the first part of the cinematic. We're going to do the unthinkable. We're going to watch it. I'm going to pause. I'm going to talk a lot. So if you haven't seen this yet, this is not the way to see it. Absolutely not. But okay, let's just get going, and I'll stop it and I'll explain some of the more interesting things within the cinematic.
My brother believed he could control me.
So this is the first part that I think stood out to me in the cinematic, because it highlights the danger that we all sort of spoke about at the start. Eridicron striking these deals with a void, allowing Fyrakk to consume the Shadow Flame. You're already seeing Fyrakk, and what happened to Nalfarian happened to Fyrakk. My brother thought that he could control me. My sister thought that she could tame me. See, the problem with the void is it drives you insane, and eventually you start viewing everyone as your enemy. Fyrakk clearly has gone off the reservation. He no longer looks to serve Eridicron. He no longer looks to serve Vernoth or even the goals of their origin. He's on a mission of his own. And I think now, looking back at the last cinematic with Vernoth and Fyrakk, that final moment where Fyrakk walks away and he says, and I will claim that power, for us, I think it's clear now that our power, or for us, is not for the Incarnates. It is for us, as in him and the voices in his head. I also think, very important to know, the ritual. I love the way the Blizzard set up the ritual here with the fire druids and their chanting. And you see this come to fruition as you watch through the cinematic. Eventually the runes that form on the ground, and then those runes get transported to the axe. Clearly some kind of runic language. Some people asked me in the comment section, are those the Jailer's runes? No. So runic languages in World of Warcraft is a thing. You have druids and druidic magic that have rune magic. Shamans have some form of rune language. Mages have runes of their own. And every rune or runic language means different things. If you put different runes in different, positions, they will grant different types of powers or open access to different types of powers. The Val have its own rune language. Zuval's language was developed by the Primus, and it was the Primus that was sort of playing around with the language of the first ones, and we never really got an answer to this, but either purposefully or by accident, figured out if he took the language of the first ones and he moved it around in a specific way, it created this incredibly strong form of magic called domination magic. That is not necessarily what they're doing here. This is just runic language, and it is applied in such a way that it clearly grants access to the power of the dream.
This rage inside my heart. My sister believed she could tame me.
There you go. Again.
My fury will not be sated.
There you go. The runes that form in front of them and then eventually gets transferred to the axe. I will say one thing, though. This entire cinematic, incredibly reminiscent of Cataclysm, Deathwing. We saw and heard from Deathwing pretty much the exact same sentiments. Deathwing was also talking about his anger, his rage, his hatred, and how his hatred cannot be contained. And I do believe that this is purposeful, but I don't think it's lazy. I heard some people say that, yeah, this is just lazy, Blizzard's just borrowing this from Cataclysm. It's not lazy if it works, right? The point is, Neltharion was also corrupted by the Void. And that's what happened to him. Now Fyrakk is being corrupted by the Void, and the same thing is happening to him, which shows us this is what Void corruption looks like. This is what happens to you when the Void starts sinking its teeth into you. And this would very much be uncorrupted Void, if you will. This isn't the corruption from a specific old god or from a specific Void entity. This is just the Void unchained. So you would probably have voices in your head from every entity that exists within the Void space, just speaking to you at the same time. And some of them are obviously not very friendly, some of them very angry, and that translates to you.
The aspects believed they could imprison.
That was a really cool moment, by the way. And of course, so very cool moment. Their eyes going, you know, as you can see, they're transferring that power, those runes, to the axe, and then immediately cutting to his eyes with the Void. It sort of, I think, is meant to convey the words that Fyrakk is speaking here is no longer his own. He is now speaking as part of the Void. He's no longer speaking as Fyrakk.
But my hatred cannot be contained.
That's that throwback to Neltharion.
I know what is coming. That the unyielding flame draws closer, ever closer. Even now, they cling to one another in the dark, lost in their dream.
The words he's saying here, this is the only sort of, I think, criticism that I have of the cinematic is it sounds very much like a cartoon villain, and the words of a cartoon villain. It's not very believable. You know, even if you believe yourself very strong, why would you celebrate the idea of them all being together and also them knowing exactly what's coming? You know, the power of surprise is important in all war. So it's badly chosen. I know they're trying to showcase his hatred towards everyone that is in the dream, and obviously they are doing a very good job of contrasting him to both Vernoth and Iridikron. Iridikron, thus far, everything we've seen of him, he has no interest in killing life, destroying the dream or the tree, or even killing dragons, for that matter. Iridikron's goal is to kill the Titans and to bring an end to order on Azeroth. Vernoth, we know her goal is to make sure that order leaves Azeroth, the Titans and so forth. So Iridikron and Vernoth still very much combined in their goal. Fyrakk clearly now is setting himself apart as being, I just want to burn things. I just want to be done with all of this. Now, we know that Fyrakk isn't going to burn the tree. He's claiming some form of power within the tree. what that power is and how exactly that power is going to manifest itself, that remains to be seen. Sadly, we don't know yet what power can possibly be within the World Tree, apart from the thousands upon thousands of souls that reside within that tree, which could actually just be what he wants, is all of the souls that's in there.
Deceived by those who squandered our birthright.
Now here, we have two different interpretations based on how we choose to hear it. And it's very much going to depend on how you think. It could either be that he is referring to Vyranoth, and that Vyranoth is being deceived by the aspects, because we know that they believe, the Incarnates believe, that the aspects squandered the birthright of the dragons. Dragons were never meant to be subservient to titans and titan keepers. Dragons were meant to rule. And he believes that Vyranoth has been deceived by the aspects. Vyranoth thinks that she's doing the right thing, when in reality she is not. Or, and I've heard people have this, and you might be right? Because the way he says it, it could mean both of these things. But the other option is that he is saying that Vyranoth is deceiving them. The only reason I don't think that is it is because he says, by those who have squandered our birthright. Those means many, right? More than one. You're not going to use those for a singular person. You will say, by her who has squandered our birthright, because you're speaking about a singular person and a woman, in this case, Vyranoth. You're not speaking about a group of people. Those is a group. It's a multiple term. So that would be the only place where I would suggest, I don't know if I can accept the second translation or the second read on it, but I've heard people express that the second read also makes sense to them, and it sort of highlights a potential theory that we've had on the channel that may or may not be true. I will go with, I don't think it's the second one, but it could be, depending on how liberal Blizzard wants to be with the use of language, and how they want to use the language here in order to obscure certain facts. I would love to know why he views every one of them as betrayers. I could understand him believing that Vyranoth is a betrayer, and I can understand him believing that the aspects are betrayers, but he's also pointing towards a bunch of mortals within the dream, and he calls the mortals betrayers as well, even though we, as such, did not betray him. We were never allied with him, nor were we ever friends with him. So I would like to know what his argument is here. Unless, of course, it is the Void speaking through him, and the Void is calling us betrayers, which may have some interesting story implications, but we won't get into it here. I may have a video on that in the future.
It falls to me to make them pay.
Okay, so there is also a very nice bit of progression here that I just wanted to share with you guys. If you look at his face here, so in the beginning, the first few times that we saw Fyrakk, he would be very much glowy flame, flame, flame. But the only part that was glowing sort of purple would be his eyes. You can see the progression. If you look at his face, there are flames, but there's a purplish glow that's starting to show up as well. The armor as well here in this picture, you can see there's a purple glow that's starting to show up. Even on his shoulders, the purple glow is there. So I think Blizzard is trying to convey he is being taken over by Void more and more. This is a really cool shot, by the way, and a really cool scene. Him just striking with the axe and it opening that portal into the dream, which I would love to know if we'll ever get an explanation for how exactly those runes are capable of doing that. But this also maybe shows a very interesting truth about the dream. Where is the dream? Seemingly everywhere. Because in this moment, he is not cutting into a side of the dream or into a specific part. He's literally there. You can see the picture from the video from this side. There's dream behind him. He is cutting into a random area on Azeroth, and it cuts into the dream. So it sort of gives us an interesting perspective of what is the dream, and that the dream is most likely everywhere. So everywhere we go, we are in the dream. We just don't realize that we are in the dream because the dream exists in a different dimension to the one that we are operating on. I just mentioned this because back in Legion, we had an interesting few months of speculation about what exactly the dream could be. And this kind of answers that. So, you know, we're 6 years later or 4 years later at this point. But finally, an answer to a speculation that we had back in Legion.
Their suffering has just begun.
Like I said, this was a really fun cinematic. The contrast of the cinematic, I think, is a lot. It's nice. It's a nice cinematic. The contrast really works, especially considering all of the previous ones. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions that the cinematic sort of opens up, and I'm not entirely sure how many answers we're gonna get, because this entire expansion, as well as Shadowlands, sort of the one thing that you can take from all of the stories currently in World of Warcraft is that Blizzard doesn't really care about providing answers. Most of the time, they just create the question and then move on before ever giving the player answers for things. You know, am I going to learn about the runes? Am I going to learn about how the rune magic works? Probably not. And then I think the biggest criticism, we already know that Fyrakk is losing, which at some point, I think, at some point we are going to start to, we're going to have a conversation as a community, you know, us and Blizzard, about how important or how much weight can a story hold if you know the outcome of said story. And I do believe that conversation needs to happen. It has been far too long that we know what the outcome is going to be literally before it even happens. We know how it's going to play out. But that's a conversation for another time. I'm wasting your time. Please like the video if you liked it. Remember to subscribe over on Patreon for $1 a month. You keep this channel free from any and all sponsorship. So I want to thank all of you for supporting. Join me over on Twitch, and you know what? I'm going to get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, peace out, fam.